Hello everyone, my name is Michael Delve and today I'm going to be talking about doing more with less, getting the most out of fluency activities in the classroom. And I'm going to be talking about two particular fluency activities. The first one is called 4-3-2 technique, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and the second one, of course the first one focuses on speaking, and the second one that I'm going to talk about is free writing, which I'm sure that many of you are also familiar with, which focuses on writing fluency. The reason I chose these activities is that I'm very familiar with them. I've used them a lot over my teaching career, and although one of them they're focusing on different skill areas in terms of speaking and writing, I found that there's a lot of similarities between the activities, and they it seems to make sense to talk about them together. And instead of just talking about one single activity, I thought it'd be more interesting to focus on both of them and kind of highlight similarities and differences between the two activities as we go through the presentation. So here is the outline of what I'd like to talk about today. So first of all, why use the 4-3-2 technique and the free writing technique for improving fluency? Why should we use that? Why is it a good thing to do? And of course also, for those of you who are not familiar with these activities, what are they and how do we implement them? And then in addition to that, I'm going to talk about some different areas connected to these fluency techniques. The first one looking at topic selection and how to choose effective and interesting topics for these activities. Task preparation. The good thing about both of these activities is they require very little preparation in terms of teacher preparation for these, so really easy to implement in the class, but a little bit of thought into how to prepare them is a good idea. Some variations on the activities. So for those of you who are familiar with these activities, hopefully there'll be some useful aspects in terms of how you can vary the activity or how you can use it to focus on different areas or different topics. I'll talk a bit about the mode of the activity, so how we can change the mode of the writing activity, and also for the speaking activity as well. I'll talk about error correction, whether we should do any error correction, and if so, what are some good ways to go about that, and then just sum up the main points of the presentation. Okay, so let's start with the why. Why is it a good idea to use the 4-3-2 technique or free writing in our classes? So the first reason for that is they're both effective ways to develop speaking and writing fluency. Fluency is something that most of our students want to achieve as one of their goals, and unfortunately this is a skill that's often neglected in textbooks. You don't often find a lot of fluency activities, but it's something that students need. And both of these activities seem to be very effective. There's a lot of research done on both of them, and they do seem to improve fluency. Another reason why these are good activities to use is they're very easy to implement. So from the perspective of the teacher, they're really excellent activities to put into your course. It's easy to fit into any type of course that you're running, whether be it a speaking course or a writing course or just a general English course, even testing courses as well. It's really kind of an all-round activity that will almost fit into any lesson or course that you're running. It's very flexible and adaptable. It's easy to change the topic or to adapt the amount of time that you're going to dedicate to the activity. So really versatile activities that you can use in the classroom. So let's have a look now at what are these two techniques. So you probably I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with these, but just to summarize the main points and kind of the fundamentals of each activity. So the first one is the 4-3-2 technique. And this was first described by Maurice in 1983, and this is an activity to develop speaking fluency. It kind of gained in popularity after it was promoted by Paul Nation, who did some research and found that the 4-3-2 activity led to some significant gains in the rate of speaking of some of his students, and there's been a lot of subsequent research that's had similar findings to this, so it does seem to be an effective activity to use. And how it works is that the speakers prepare a talk on a familiar topic, and they give the talk to 3 different partners under shrinking time conditions. Usually it's a 4-minute talk with one partner, then they'll both partners will talk for 4 minutes, then they'll change seats or change to talk to another partner, and again both students will talk for 3 minutes, and then there'll be another change of partner, and the final one is a 2-minute talk. And the idea is that you give the same talk with the same content 3 times, but hopefully by the time you do the 3rd repetition, you'll be able to speak more fluently and more quickly with a greater rate of speech, and hopefully you'll be able to say the same amount of information in the 3rd talk as you could in the first one, or at least you will be able to say it more quickly and fluently. There are 3 kind of important points to bear in mind that kind of underpin this activity. So the first one is that there should be a different listener for each of the talks. This is important because it removes any pressure to add any new information, and also from the perspective of the listener, listening to the same talk 3 times is obviously not very interesting, but if it's a different one each time, that maintains the interest for the listener as well. The second point is that it's the same monologue that's repeated, so there are no changes, hopefully, in what the student is trying to say. And the purpose of this is that it gives the speaker easier access to the language they need in the 2nd and 3rd monologues, because they're not looking for new language to add. And it also gives them more confidence as well through those repetitions. And the 3rd point is that the time is reduced with each repetition. And the kind of reasoning behind this is that it supports fluency. That means that new language is not needed to fill the allotted time. Right? So there shouldn't be anything added into the 2nd or the 3rd repetitions. And kind of the fundamental point of this activity is that repetition is key, and this helps to reduce the processing demands in the final repetition. So hopefully in the initial planning and kind of initial stage of the talk, the students already develop the language and the vocabulary and the grammar, and when it comes to the 3rd repetition, they can focus on the actual production aspect of the talk. So that's a basic outline of the 4-3-2 technique. And as I said, the second activity I'm going to focus on here is called freewriting. And this is an activity that was developed by Elbow in 1973. So it's been used for quite a number of years now. And the idea here is very simple, is that the learners write continuously for a set period of time. Quite often it's 10 minutes, but that can really vary according to the purpose that you're using for, or how much time that you have available. A key aspect of this activity is that there's no error correction or editing by the teacher or by the student. And the important reason for this is that it encourages writers to write freely without holding back. So what's meant by this is that when students write for the teacher or write a piece of work that's going to be submitted and corrected, they often worry about making mistakes. And this can often result in slow production, and also with students not experimenting with the vocabulary or the grammar that they use. So you tend to get a very safe piece of writing that's not written written very slowly. So this can hinder the fluency aspect of the writing. So the idea here is that students have much more freedom to use more experimental language, and also to write more freely and hopefully more fluently as well. So that's the basics of free writing. And as I said, although they focus on different skills, I feel there's a lot of overlap between these two activities. Just as a guide as to, this is how I introduce the activity to my students. Just usually on a PowerPoint slide, I'll introduce the kind of rules, but the guidelines for the activity. In my particular classes, I give students a choice of topic, although that doesn't necessarily the case. It might be a teacher selected topic. And as I said, the timing is flexible. I tend to do 10 minutes. And our time is actually 10 minutes for the writing period. The students should try and write about anything that comes into their mind. So they're not trying to filter out good or bad ideas. They're just trying to write as whatever comes into their head as they write about this subject. They're instructed not to worry about grammar or spelling mistakes. Important, particularly I find in Japan, is that students are very quick to erase any mistakes or errors that they make. But in this case, I instruct them just to cross out any error and not to use an eraser. There shouldn't really be any dictionary use as well, just using the language that you know. And this is something I do specifically maybe to my classes, that if they don't know the word or expression in English, that it's okay to write it in their first language, in this case, Japanese. And of course, to try and write as many words as possible. So again, quite a simple activity and quite easy to introduce and set up. Okay, so as I said, there's a few issues that you do need to consider if you're going to use either of these activities in your class. The first of these is topic selection. So it's important to choose familiar topics because obviously students are not going to be able to speak or write fluently about topics that they are unfamiliar with. I think they can be linked to the lesson theme maybe that you're doing, for example, to introduce a topic, or maybe as a unit review, as a reflection on what they've studied in that particular unit or lesson. And particularly with free writing, it's been found that students write more when they're given a choice of topic. Not conclusively so, but there seems to be a lot of research that does suggest that giving students a choice has good results in terms of fluency. For the 432 activity, I'm not familiar with the research on topic choice here. I would think my kind of intuition tells me that it probably would have similar findings, but I'm not sure if this is true. So I can't say with the same resolve that you should give students a choice, although in my classes I do tend to give them a choice of topic. A good helpful piece of research when you're looking at free writing topics was generated by Otterson, Wilkins and Sponsella, and they did quite a large-scale survey in which they, particularly for Japanese students again, where they created a student-generated list of free writing topics that the students found most interesting and effective for using as topics. So that's I've used that resource quite a lot for choosing the topics, and I think that's a good way to go. Said maybe it might be more specific for Japan, but probably there's a lot of topics that are going to be of interest to other countries as well, including Thailand. Okay, and also some of the research suggests that some students do prefer teacher-led activities. So it might be in some cases, particularly maybe with lower or less confident writers, those students might not want to have a choice. Maybe they prefer to have a single topic that everyone is writing about. So that's something to consider. All right, you don't have to give students a choice. Think about your teaching situation and your students in particular. Okay, just to give you an example, in the last semester I taught at my university in Japan. These are some topics that I used I think it was for the free writing activity. And I had two types of topic. I had a kind of general kind of narrative topic. I guess it's more of a descriptive topic. Yeah, so a descriptive kind of genre, wherever the topics are very general. And these are the ones that I used. And just from my own kind of research perspective, I wanted to compare this kind of genre with more of an argumentative genre, where students are presented with a question. So again, this for half of the semester we focused on the more descriptive general topics, and then for the second half of the semester I gave them a choice of argumentative topic. And that's some research I'm working on at the moment. I haven't got the results yet, but I'm interested to see which of these, if indeed any of them in particular, do tend to produce higher or lesser degrees of fluency. But again, it doesn't have to be just from the point of view of fluency. Maybe you've been working on argumentative writing in your class, or you'd like to look at different genres. So this is another good way to introduce that into your lessons. Okay, so which topics did students find interesting? These are some of the, again, this is from last semester. I think I had 40 respondents on this questionnaire. This isn't all of the results, by the way. I'm compiling them at the moment, so sorry that I haven't run any statistics on these, but just to give you an idea of what students did or didn't find interesting. So on the top here, this is for the 432 activities. So you can see this was more of the kind of descriptive topics or narrative topics. See, a school memory seemed to work pretty well. The other ones here maybe are kind of so-so. Special place maybe was okay. There seemed quite mixed results for the other ones. And then down here we had some of the narrative topics. You can see this one, do you prefer summer or winter, was very popular. Although I remember listening to some of these, they weren't maybe the most interesting talks to listen to, but I guess maybe the students found it quite easy to talk about those topics. Maybe that's why they were popular. You can see this one seemed to work quite well. Do you prefer traveling in Japan or abroad? The one down there in the corner, I think, is traveling by car or public transportation. These students are quite young. I guess some of them probably don't have a car, so maybe that isn't an option. Maybe that wasn't such a good topic to choose here. So kind of the results I got was kind of hit and miss. It's only 40 students, so I shouldn't rely on this too much, but it is like my students that I will be teaching again next semester. So from my own personal point of view, it's quite useful for me to get an idea for planning for the next semester. So it's good, I think, to get some feedback from your students. Maybe you could even do that at the start of the semester and kind of gauge which would be the best topics for them. I mean, another issue is that you don't really want to overload your students with too many choices. So how many choices you give them, again, is probably another important consideration. Okay. And this was for the free writing, and you can see here some of the argumentative topics at the top. Nothing kind of outstanding. I guess Our Books Better Than Movies seem to be quite popular. My hobby, as you can probably imagine, seemed to work very well as a free writing topic. So that was a very popular one. Okay, so that's topic selection. Let's have a look at preparation now, particularly for the 4-3-2 technique. So the students, not really the teacher, but the students do need time to prepare for this. And some research suggests that longer periods of planning, up to 10 minutes, does facilitate better performance in terms of the speaking performance. So where possible, you might consider giving your students that extra bit of time to get ready. This, I think, can be done in class or for homework. The benefit of doing it in class is that everyone has exactly the same amount of time to get ready. Whereas I found that if you set it for homework, some students will prepare extensively for the talk, maybe too much. Whereas on the other hand, you'll have students who will just maybe do a minute of preparation before the class begins, and as a result the quality of their talk is much lower. But so to some extent that's down to the students, isn't it, for their own kind of effort that they put into it, and you'll find that across any activity. But I would say, from what I've experienced anyway, 10 minutes is a good amount of time for them to produce a good piece of speaking, a good performance in their oral presentation. Just to give you an idea, that of course this is just my way of introducing the activity. There's many ways you can do it. This is how I kind of had a worksheet where I introduced the task, and in my particular class we did this every Monday. That you can see the choice of topics here. These topics were taken from the student generated list that I talked about before, and they did seem to be quite popular ones. And I also gave the students the option of choosing their own topic if they wanted to talk about some of their own thing, and some of them did and some of them didn't. This is an example from one of the students. So this was submitted before class, kind of online through Google Classroom. So some students kind of hand wrote them, whereas others kind of did this brainstorming activity on the computer. And you can see this was the topic of the student. So kind of my favorite sports, and then she kind of chose some different ones, and then connected some ideas that they can talk about. So I found this kind of brainstorming activity is a useful way to help them prepare, and also very easy for them to use when they're giving their talk. They can kind of go through each of those points and add in details about each one of them. So that seemed to work quite well. And in addition to that, I was quite interested in developing vocabulary. So this is kind of an additional activity that I had them do in preparation, is to think about the topic they're going to talk about and choose 5 words or expressions they'd like to use in their talk. And again, here we have the example that this student kind of looked up and used their dictionary, and then used those words in their talk, and hopefully built their vocabulary. For free writing, there's less preparation time is needed. You can just have students start writing, although if you'd like to, you could, if students are writing on the same topic, you could have some warm-up discussions, talking with a partner before beginning writing, just to generate some ideas to give students some things that they can write about. Okay, so a few activity variations, talking about time. Excuse me. For the 4-3-2 activity, 4 minutes is very challenging. So I tended to reduce the time. I went to 3 minutes on the first round, 2 minutes 30, and then 2 minutes. Just because my students were quite kind of low intermediate level, I suppose, and not very confident speakers. So I think 4 minutes might be quite off-putting for them. So 3, 2.52 isn't as catchy as 432, but in your case it might be more effective. And for very low level students, you might reduce the times even further. I haven't done this in my example, as you can see, but you might want to keep the proportion of how much time you reduce the same as the original 432, but I'm not sure how important it is to do that. For free writing, there's probably no need to adjust the times for levels. I mean, low level students will take longer to write, so giving them 10 minutes or 20 minutes is still going to be a good thing to do. Okay, I found that 10 minutes seemed to work well in my classes. Okay, we're getting a bit short of time now, so I'm going to go through these quite quickly. So again, another variation that you can have on these activities is the mode. So for free writing, are you going to have them handwrite or type? Might depend on the student preference. Again, you might want to ask them beforehand. And also it might depend on if you have computers available, or if the students have computers, if they're going to do this. There are a lot of possible advantages to typing, in that students can easily see how many words they've written. And also, if you're doing some research in this area, it's easy to collect the data that you can kind of do some investigation with later, whereas if it's handwritten, it makes it much more difficult to perform any research on that. For the 432 technique, you might want to do face-to-face, or you might want to have students do recordings. You probably wouldn't want to have them recording every week, but what I've done in my classes, I had a recording in the beginning of the semester, mid-semester, at the end of the semester, just to compare and see how the development goes through across the semester. And I'm hoping to do some research on that. I use a site called Zengengo to do those recordings, and that seemed to work very well. Again, so for research purposes, the recordings can be quite helpful. Although face-to-face obviously you have a much more, have a real listener, so it's not more realistic. Well, I guess it's more realistic, but it's not realistic in terms of it's just a monologue, but at least you have a real person listening to you. So there's benefits of both modes there. Okay, error correction. Probably need to be very cautious about this, because you don't want to use too much error correction in fluency activities. However, a lot of students do seem to want this. So one way around kind of not disrupting the fluency too much is to give general feedback on some common mistakes, and to allow students to check kind of unknown vocabulary between each stage of the 432 activity. So after the first repetition, give them some time to use their dictionary and find the vocabulary that they need. Okay, I did allow, in the free writing, I gave students a chance to do some editing of their work, and these are the instructions that I gave them. And I found that actually to be quite a very useful vocabulary building activity as well, and also a chance to check their grammar. But I didn't want them to erase the mistakes that they had made originally. And I didn't check that myself, just that was a self-check that the students did. Okay, I think I need to fast forward a bit here. These are some follow-up activities that you can use. I'm sure that you can read those for yourself. And of course, there's a whole bunch of other activities that you could probably introduce into your lesson as well. So if you wanted to, it's very easy to extend these fluency activities into other areas of your lesson. So just to conclude, both of the free writing and 432 techniques are very effective fluency activities that need minimal preparation from the teacher, which for us is great, and hopefully for the students as well. It's easy to adapt the activities to different proficiencies, interests, and the course goals, and consideration should be given on how best to use these activities in your particular situation. So they really are activities that you can kind of mold and fit into your particular students and your particular courses. And there's also a lot of research opportunities here into looking to the effects of genre, the timing, the effects of error correction on how that impacts fluency, and a whole host of other areas as well. So if you are interested in doing any collaboration in that kind of area, that would be great. Please let me know. Okay, I hope that you found this talk useful to some extent. These are my references, and if you would like to give me any comments or share some of your experiences with these activities or how you like to use them in your classroom, I'd be very interested to hear from you. If you have made it to this end of the presentation, thank you very much, and yeah, I hope that you found it useful. Goodbye.